Hey guys, welcome to the spoiler vlog for The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. I just wanted to pop in ahead of the meat of this vlog and let you guys know that this video obviously does contain spoilers for this book, and obviously I do refer to events that have happened in the previous books in this series as well. So if you have not yet read The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, then please click out of this video and come back to me when you are ready to discuss. If you are new here, if this is the first of my Wheel of Time videos that you're seeing, I have made a spoiler vlog on every book in this series so far, and I will link the playlist down in the description box for you. Aside from that, I just wanted to remind you guys to be respectful in the comments, not to spoil anything, and if I'm theorizing things that are wrong, please don't tell me that I'm wrong, because that ruins the surprise and the reveal later down the line in the rest of the series. But now that all of that's out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this video. So I've started The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, very early days. I'm less than 10% of the way through this mammoth book. I'm on page 77. And can I say, this is a slow start. Like, I'm up to the beginning of chapter 3 and that is 77 pages. A 40-page chapter for chapter 1 is just not the one. Like, you need to ease me in a little bit before we get to chapters of that length. That being said, at this point, I'm having a good time because we're switching perspective pretty frequently. Like in the last 37-page chapter, we got Perrin, Rand, and Matt's perspective, because we all know when we're stuck in certain characters' perspectives for extended periods of time, I don't have the greatest time. So I'm enjoying that about it. And also, straight off the bat, the Seanchan are back. They're being led by a woman who's working for the Empress. I didn't have my sticky tabs on hand. I need to go back and find the reference to this, but she implied, as I thought, that the reason why the Seanchan enslaved the Aes Sedai is because of something that happened, I think, was it at Manetheren, with the Aes Sedai. Like I said with the last book, where I feel like something suspicious happened with the Aes Sedai potentially turning against their allies. I feel like she kind of confirmed that. Did I literally just find that? I just opened it to a page and it was that page. That was truly something. It says she was let me just check my pronunciation, because we know how bad I am at that with this series. Damani. It says she was a Damani, a woman who could channel and thus too dangerous to be allowed to run loose. Memories of the armies of night were still strong in Seanchan 1,000 years after their destruction. So I feel like this potentially references the battle where the Amelin Seat said in the last book, when Matt woke up and was speaking in the Old Tongue, she said that it was something to do like the Aes Sedai were their allies, but that doesn't actually mean that the individual men supported Aes Sedai. I feel like this confirms that something, because I thought that was suspicious. I thought she was maybe covering up for something that potentially actually happened. And I feel like this is a further hint in that direction. We also have Matt still continually speaking the Old Tongue, which I personally still think is a connection to Arthur Hawkwing, that will only kind of be released with his death. But hopefully this book will have some answers. I don't know if it will, but I'm very, very excited to get into this one, because I know a lot of people say like this is one of the best books in the series. Not the best for a lot of people. I think that comes a little bit later on, but a lot of people say like this is one of the best. And I feel like I need that at this point in this series. I liked book 1, book 2 not so much. Really liked book 3. Now I need to know why everybody loves this series, and I'm hoping that that is what this book is going to deliver. In this book especially, I'm getting kind of annoyed at how Robert Jordan is writing women, but we know I'm a romance girly at heart, so this whole Lan and Nynaeve thing, I love this. I am at the point that I'm at in this book right now a little bit worried about Galad. I'm like 280 pages in. I'm around like the page chapter 17, 18 kind of mark. And we've just had a chapter that was from both Tom and then Min's perspective. And Min spoke to Gawain and Galad is suddenly very supportive of the Children of the Light, and he's like, oh, did you know the founder was a good guy? Like, even though they've kind of been extreme in the past, like the original guy that founded the Children of the Light, like he was a decent and very clever guy, and he's received a book from the current leader of the Children of the Light. And the reason why this worries me so much is because the one thing that everybody always says about him, I know like Elaine doesn't like him very much, which I've always felt is slightly unfair, but like I feel she knows him better than I do, so maybe she has a reason to hate him other than the fact that he's like a half brother and not a full brother. But they always say that he's like good to a fault. Like, he always takes the right path. Even, like, he doesn't really see nuance or grey areas. He's like, this is good and the right thing to do, so that's what I'm going to do. And that feels especially dangerous to me when it comes to the Children of the Light, because that makes me feel like he is very vulnerable to corruption. Because if the Children of the Light approach him, which it seems they are, and start saying like, this is the right path, the Aes Sedai are bad, this is the right way, this is why this is good, he's very susceptible to being turned to their side. And you know, I was rooting for Galad. I was saying everyone was unfair for being so mean to him. Is it him that likes Egwene as well? So I was like rooting for them, and now I just feel like it's gonna go in a very not good direction because of all of the groups in here. Like the Dark One, I would take 1,000 Dark Ones before I take the Children of the Light, because that shit happens in real life and is dangerous. I'm 416 pages in, and I'm gonna say something that's like, I feel it's hella obvious at this point, but is it the Tuatha'an are very clearly a branch of the Aiel, or like the original Aiel, and then I feel like the Aiel that we know now, is that how you pronounce Aiel? I'm gonna check it because we know pronunciation is not how I think it's gonna be. No, it's the Aiel. It says in the glossary as well that the Tuatha'an are among the few who can cross the Aiel waste unmolested, because the Aiel strictly avoid all contact with them. So I feel like they're like the original Aiel based on these flashbacks that we're getting, because I'm in the chapter where Rand has gone, like, he's touching all the pillars and it's showing him like visions of the past and like the history of the Aiel. So I feel like the Tuatha'an were the original Aiel, and then because of all of this conflict and the Aiel following the way of the leaf, they cast out anybody who kind of like fought back, who invented, created, founded the Aiel as we know them today. I feel like that's what we're getting at now. I had a feeling at the end of the last chapter we were going to go that way, with the way that they were saying like, you can't hurt people, it's bad, like these tools have no purpose, like a spear can put food on the table but a sword causes only death. I was like, this sounds a lot like what the Tuatha'an believe. Oh my god, and they're searching for the song, right? Isn't that the, if I remember correctly from book 1, that's their end goal, that they're looking for a song, which now that I know, or at least have a very strong suspicion that they're the original Aiel, I wonder if anything will be revealed or become a little bit clearer about exactly what they're searching for and maybe why. Can somebody tell me how this book just got sci-fi? I feel like that went from 0 to 100 real quick and I'm so confused. I gotta say, it's been a few hundred pages since I've checked in with you. I can't remember at what point I was page-wise the last time we spoke, but I'm now on page 777, so I only have pretty much exactly 200 pages to go. And I feel like there are moments in this book that I have loved, but I feel like there are still moments in this book that have dragged. Like, there's very little that I've even really had a thought about in however long it's been since I last spoke to you guys. And I feel like if we split this book into quarters, the first quarter was a little bit slow. We could have accelerated those events a little bit. The second quarter, I loved. I was so invested. The third quarter, we slowed down again. And then the last quarter that I'm now currently in, I feel like we've picked up. My favorite perspectives of this book, and it's interesting, I feel, how it changes book by book for me, because last book it was Matt that I loved and I was really enjoying his perspective, and in this one I don't know whether it's because he's with Rand, but I'm just not feeling him as much as I was. And I love Perrin again in this one. I really like the journey that he's on. While I wasn't thrilled at the thought of him going back to Two Rivers, I really like how this has forced him to confront the two paths that he was faced with at the beginning, because he's never really wanted to choose violence, and then he's returned home and he's found out that his family are dead, and he's just embraced that path, and the way of the leaf, which was very briefly a potential path for him, is now not even an option, and he's very much on the path of becoming like a warrior of sorts, although he's obviously struggling with the leadership and like hero elements of it. But the other perspective that I'm really enjoying, and we haven't had it for a long time, it's only just come back, is Min and the stuff that's happening in the White Tower. I know that the TV show is very different from the books, because I watched the show and read some of the books, but even when I was watching the show, like the White Tower stuff was the thing that I was most interested in, and I really enjoyed those elements of the previous books as well. When all of the girls were at the White Tower, those were my favorite perspectives. So I am really enjoying Min's perspective, and also the politics within the White Tower. And something that I'm finding incredibly interesting is that the Amyrlin Seat, or the previous Amyrlin Seat at this point, is going to be teaming up with Logain. I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the future, and I'm also generally quite excited to see what the future of Logain as a character is. The more I read of this, the more I see Brandon Sanderson's inspiration for Stormlight in this as well. How we have like our core cast of main characters, but then every so often a new very random person will be introduced, or we'll just have one chapter from a, not even a side character, more of like an extra that may turn out to be like a new perspective that we have a lot on, or it might kind of be like a one-off. And I can't remember, is his name Odie? But it's the guy who was familiar as Padden Fane. Like, he has had just one chapter in this book, and like, you know, things like that. So yeah, very much swings and roundabouts at the minute. The bits I'm enjoying, I'm really enjoying, but there are quite a few sections throughout this book I would say that are dragging just a little bit for me at this point. Just to address the elephant in the room, I did have a hair change halfway through this vlog, but I'm on page 879, and I did have a suspicion that Lord Luke was Slayer, like way back when Perrin turned up in the Two Rivers, and this mysterious kind of like handsome guy that has not everybody in his control but is like charming everyone. Just the coincidence of this Lord Luke turning up, somebody that Perrin has never known, like in his hometown, at the same time that there's this kind of like mysterious, almost alluring figure running around the dream world killing wolves. I was like, well, they gotta be the same person, right? But then Perrin got a full view of Slayer, and he looks like Lan. So then I thought, well, it's not like they can't be the same person. Turns out they are. And thinking about it, Robert Jordan, like, he's done the work, like the evidence is there when Nynaeve, was it Nynaeve, managed to transform herself into looking completely different in the dream world. We also have this whole plot line with Egwene and the Wise Ones and them telling her that she can't go into the dream world. Is it Telanriod? It's probably not pronounced like that, but she can't go in because she's not skilled, she doesn't know what she's doing, and it's dangerous, which definitely alludes to a whole realm of possibility within this dream world that our main characters haven't really touched upon yet because they're not skilled enough. They're very much just accessing the surface level, and it's very much implied that there's so much else going on beneath. And we did also have, is it Birgitte, who is one of Arthur Hawkwing's army members that gets called with the horn, who kind of lives, I guess, in the dream world, which is where they kind of hang around and wait to be reincarnated or called forth by the horn. So I feel like with this progression, it makes more sense why the majority of the characters are able to enter this dream world at will, because it seems like there's a lot more going on there than originally meets the eye. And I'm assuming that as the characters grow in strength, we will understand a little bit more about that dream world and the depth of it. Assumedly mainly from, I want to say, Perrin and Egwene's perspective, because they seem to be the two most skilled in that area right now, but also from different angles, I guess. Like, Egwene is her ability to wield the one power, and that seems to be like her area of expertise is going to be dreamwalking, whereas Perrin has that connection through his connection to the wolves. Okay, sorry, but I've just read one more line and I just realized who Lord Luke is, and I must have spaced when he was introduced and like described for the first time, and my mind was definitely in a place of connecting him with Slayer than it was anybody else. But way back, not long, I think, after Rand had reached the Aiel in the Waste, he was talking to some of the women. Are they called like the Wise Ones or something? Why is my brain spacing all of this terminology when I've literally been reading 1,000 pages of this book? But he was talking to them and he asked about his parents, and somebody told him the story of his family, what happened to his mother, how she was married previously and had another son, and then she left and joined the Aiel, and then like the whole thing with Rand happened. But then later on, after his mother's death, his father was killed by what seems to me Rand's brother. So Rand has a brother out there who is 100% Lord Luke, which means, well, I don't know what that means. He obviously, in my eyes, wants rid of Rand. So did he come to Two Rivers looking for Rand, and now he's kind of just waiting around for him, or like sabotaging the Two Rivers because that's where Rand's from and he wants Rand gone. I don't know what extra layer Rand having a rampaging brother is going to add to this story, but I'm interested to see it play out. And this is the like little plot work elements that I heard Robert Jordan was known for, that I also associate with Brandon Sanderson, that I have been waiting for. So finally, what page am I on? 800 and I don't even know, I didn't put my bookmark in. I think I'm on like page 870 something. I'm finally having oh my god moments. So I am coming in now after having finished the book quite a few days ago. I've done the live show. I've also edited this vlog up to date. And my feelings, my thoughts on this series are so conflicted. Because if I tell you my thoughts on this book right now, my rating, I gave this a 3-star and I'm very frustrated with this series as a whole. But then if you go off the fact that I've just edited the vlog, everything that I kind of talk about in this vlog is things about this book that I really, really enjoyed, like the things that I'm in this for. But 15 minutes of spoilery reactions to a 1,000 page book is not very much, and that is where my frustration comes in, because this book seems to be a very good plot that is padded with a lot of just like useless, repetitive information. My kind of conclusion coming out of this book is that I do not doubt that Robert Jordan had a solid idea, has a solid foundation that he built this series on. I don't doubt that his plot work is really good, and as evidenced in this vlog, I'm starting to see the little crumbs that he's laying be built upon and come into fruition a little bit. I just don't necessarily think that Robert Jordan is the most skilled writer or storyteller. I am frustrated because I am reading this series for everything that I've picked up on this vlog. I'm reading this series for the excellent groundwork, and if I'm being real, I never went into this series because I wanted to like it. That wasn't the purpose of me picking up this book. I obviously hoped that I would fall in love with this series, but the reason why I wanted to read it is because it's this iconic classic staple series, because it influenced Brandon Sanderson, who's one of my favorite fantasy authors of all time. Because when you read this book, you also see similarities in the lore to Game of Thrones and the Realm of the Earthlings. And as a fantasy reader, I want to be able to have read this to see its influence in fantasy work later down the line, and also just to experience the classic. So me enjoying it is kind of secondary. It's not the reason why I'm here. But obviously, I did also want to really, really fall in love with this series. And I think at this point, it is unlikely that I'm going to rate any book in this series 5 stars. And the more I get into the series, the more I'm enjoying the plot and the plot work, but the less I'm enjoying the writing. I knew going into this that Robert Jordan didn't write female characters very well, and it's when we get to this book that I'm truly seeing that come into fruition. I also don't really think that Robert Jordan writes any characters of the age of our main cast very well, because something that I really felt when I was reading this, my main source of frustration, is that reading this book feels like being in the pub with a bunch of old men. And this is something that I mentioned in the live show. I think I mentioned it in my just regular vlog that I was filming at the time that I was reading this book. But like, it's like being in a pub surrounded by old men who tell you the same anecdote over and over again. And the thing that really frustrates me about the romantic relationships in here is, one, this series doesn't need to have so many romances in it, because you can have a fantasy without romance, or where the romance is very much like in the background. Like, yes, the side characters have little romantic things going on, but it doesn't have to be a part of the story. And that is just not where Robert Jordan has skill, like writing romantic relationships. So I think what's really frustrating me is that the romances, the relationships that are happening in here kind of perpetuate a series of like antiquated gender roles from like the 1950s, 1960s, which is what makes me believe that, or makes me feel like it's like being in the pub with a bunch of old men. And I know, one, Robert Jordan, I believe, was quite religious, and also his age and the time that he was writing this is kind of like responsible for why the relationships are portrayed that way. But not all fantasy in the 90s is portrayed that way either. So I'm still in it for the plot, but I'm still frustrated by the writing as well. And I know there are so many people who love the Wheel of Time series, and you guys don't ignore that these things exist. Like, you don't claim that he writes the best romantic relationships, you don't claim that the writing is the best, and I want to know how you guys got through so many books in this series, when for me personally, and this might not be the same for you, but for me personally, the writing and the amount of like filler in here is so much that I feel like it's hindering the story. Because if you think about how in this vlog I've pulled up all of the things that I'm really excited about in this, and when I watched this vlog back, it reignited my interest in this series again. It was like, oh my god, like yes, all this stuff happened, and I love that. But that's like so small compared to, I feel, the inflated writing. So like, how did you guys just kind of like love this enough for that not to bother you? Because it does bother me a little bit. So at the minute, I'm still committed to reading this series. I'm still desperate to find out like why everybody says the payoff on the series is so worth it. But the actual reading experience, my enjoyment when I'm reading it, is like laced with frustration, and I feel like I'm searching for needles in a haystack, and the needles are the things that were in this vlog, and the haystack is everything else in this 1,000 page book that I didn't even comment on because I didn't find it to be particularly relevant or exciting. They were my Shadow Rising thoughts. I really did think that they were going to be like, I was going to love this book more than any of the others, but I feel like this just had like a pickup of plot, which is why I was a little bit more interested in it. Then that kind of like was balanced in like a negative way, I guess, by the actual like sheer length of this thing. But let me know down in the comments what your thoughts on the Shadow Rising were. The next book is The Fires of Heaven, and I will be hoping to bring you guys the spoiler video for that in October, so do stay tuned if you are at all interested in that. But aside from that, guys, I do hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.